We are in a transition, a paradigm shift, if you want to call it that, where I believe we are social creatures, that we need to be in contact and close proximity. But I think we're living in a culture where there's powers that come when you put a bunch of nervous systems together. One of those things is entrainment. So as humans, as we become more interconnected in these fields, what I've noticed is that there's an intelligence to group fields when there's coherence, and we can access more together than we can on our own. Trauma to me is basically where we are stuck in parts that are contracted and
On the show today, Christian Pankhurst. So Christian is the founder of Heart IQ, and I think he has a very different style to me. But loads of my friends have recommended him, and my Hungarian finance manager asked if he was single. So I don't know what that means. Clearly, he's a charming man and very successful coach, doing a lot of good work on relationships, communication, emotional intelligence, we might say, shadow, authenticity, maybe a bit on trauma. Yeah, all coming up. Christian, welcome.
yeah, wonderful to be here. Thanks for having me.
Let's dive in. So you founded a system called Heart IQ, and when people talk about the heart, sometimes they mean the sort of pump in the body. Sometimes they sort of just generally mean the emotions. I think it has sort of meanings in Buddhism and different spiritual systems that are quite different. What do you mean when you say the heart, and why does it matter?
Um, yeah, for me, the heart represents a state where we're connected to our intrinsic goodness. So are we rooting all of our connection, our emotions, our internal relationship with self from a place that we're intrinsically good rather than from a place of shame, needs for validation, for um, yeah, an externalized way of getting meaning. So when we say I'm connecting to the heart, it's like I'm connecting through that part of me that is intrinsically enough, is okay.
There's a
And
few levels
therefore,
to that. Yeah, go on,
sorry.
go on.
No, I was just saying that when we talk about opening the heart, it's
Yeah.
really allowing ourselves to feel our own sense of aliveness and our own intrinsic connection to our worth and to what feels right and good and wholesome. So, a way to maybe share an example of that is I can be mad at the world, I can have a lot of anger and rage, and it can be coming through a closed heart, which means like I'm coming from a place of contraction, but I can also express that fire and that anger through a place of a sense of self-worth, a claim of boundary, a state of this is who I am, this is what matters, here's the lines, and I'm standing up for myself. And that same energy can come through an open heart and it will feel very different to self and to the other, and it will feel really, really good. So it's not that anger is intrinsically an unhealthy emotion. Is it coming through an open or a closed system?
Okay, seems like mixing quite a few different things that will be useful. Maybe we'll start taking them apart. I'm not sure about intrinsic goodness. I mean, I've met children and they're fucking monsters. So I'm not sure about this sort of this liberal intrinsic goodness idea that seems to be a Rousseauian kind of romantic idea recycled through the hippies into kind of modernity. But yeah, okay, let's start looking at this. I mean, let's look at applications then. So better relationships, right? You wrote a book on this.
Mhm.
How do I have better? I've got a girlfriend. We get on pretty well. Communication, I think, is pretty good. How do I get on even better with her? I think that's motivating for me and many people listening.
Yeah. So in the book, it describes about how it's really important that we are really good trackers. People, the skill of being able to become consciously aware of what are we doing with our pain? What are we doing with the parts of us that are getting in the way that could be potentially sabotaging our relationships? And can we speak into that honestly and transparently? So there's communication, but then there's embodied communication. So anyone could, learn the right skills and do the right talk, but are we able to create a sense of safety in our nervous system and relate from a place of being in a regulated, in capacity way with our partner? So how do we actually drop in and connect from that place of embodied safety. I'm not talking about needing to change the environment so we're always in a safe space. I'm talking about creating an intrinsic safety in the body that allows us to be who we are in the presence of other, so that we're not going into some codependent merge and we're not so independent that it feels kind of like flat. So that's the balance that we're working with within a heart IQ inspired relationship. Does that make sense?
So it does and it doesn't. So I hate this use of the word safety. I was on a podcast yesterday talking about Ukraine quite extensively for an hour and a half and have a very different sense of what safety means. It wasn't an emotion until about 10 years ago, as far as I can tell. I didn't see any of the, poets talking about it in English literature. But I do understand the importance of nervous system regulation. And I know when I'm not kind of wildly in a rage or anxious or
Mm.
defensive, I have more availability for connection neurologically and just subjectively with, friends, partners, etc. So that part makes sense to me. Is this concept sort of something more than kind of like nervous system regulation? It seems to have a sort of spiritual component to it, almost metaphorical component to it. There's a few different pieces here that sound great as poetry, and I can imagine this being very convincing and seductive to people. When I'm
Mm.
checking, it's not simply sort of mimetically attractive; that it actually has substance. So a little bit challenging, but is it? Are you simply talking about sort of nervous system regulation or something more?
Yeah, that's the primary. I'm not talking about the sense of, I don't know, there's often this new age concept of safety that I think you were referring to, where we're constantly in a state of trying to create safety by changing other people's behaviors to make us feel less triggered. And we're there, but that's not what we're talking about. I'm talking about what you're referring to as when our nervous system is regulated, we are more able to access frontal lobe consciousness, impulse control. We're more able to regulate our emotions and thus relate from a more conscious, connected place without coming from our past, overlaying consistently in our conversations in an untracked, unconscious way.
Right, right. So am I talking to reality right now, or is this you look like my school teacher, or remind me of
Yeah,
my ex-girlfriend, or all the men on the planet, or whoever, whatever the layer is we're putting on top of it?
exactly.
And you also do shadow work, right? Do you want to sort of say a little bit about that, what that is for listeners?
Sure. So, I mean, a lot of definitions out there. The definition that I use in my work is around um, this experience of, is it allowed? So growing up, going through our developmental stages, it's common that many of us experience conditioning where we have exiled certain parts or emotions where it's simply not okay to bring that in or to express certain parts of ourselves because we've had a conditioning that they haven't been allowed, whether it's not allowed culturally, not allowed in our family systems. And so shadow work, excuse me, is the application of doing some inner research to feel into, like, in our full emotional energetic spectrum or range, what parts of us have we denied? And there could be gold or potential power that we can activate if we learn to welcome those parts back into our whole experience. So it's around welcoming all aspects of self and integrating that back so that we're not in a fragmented state in the world where these shadows get activated anyway, whether we like it or not, but now they're unconsciously activated in relationships, in our careers, in our friendships, just in life generally. The collective stuff that's happening in the world can really pull out our shadows in an unconscious way. So it's really about bringing consciousness or light into those dark areas, not dark as in they're bad, but dark as in they haven't really been researched or felt or met. There's no relationship with those parts. And so I'm a big fan of being with all of who we are and allowing ourselves to be fully human, not in this kind of like idealized spiritual enlightened self, but to actually drop into like the full human experience.
Yeah, yeah, the part that wants to fuck 18-year-olds and murder everyone. That part, right?
Well, that would be the behavioral distortion that comes out of a shadow unowned.
Yeah,
That's
it's
not.
just it's the really dangerous people, the ones that would never make a joke like that, in my experience. They're the really dangerous people. But you're British, right? You grew up in the UK?
I am both British and Dutch. I have a Dutch mum, British dad. I got
Okay.
both passports, so I can move about freely.
I've just got the Irish one, Christian. It's fucking great. So we don't often. First of all, it's nice having a Brit on. We have a lot of Americans. You know, if you,
Ah,
it's nice having. It's not many Brits that have been successful, done well, put themselves forward like you
yeah.
have. Which I respect that. I like that. It's nice. We don't do it very often. So, what
I
do you?
love it.
British audience is probably about 30-40% of the audience. So, what do you think of the big Brit shadows as someone who's got a little bit of lived experience and outside experience?
Yeah, it's similar to the tall poppy syndrome in Australia. There's this shadow of I would consider it what's maybe called a light shadow. It's like doing too well. Is it allowed to be super successful and to kind of like claim that? Like in America, they are so good at just
Yes.
so self-aggrandized and being supported and celebrated in that. There's such a cheerleader frequency here. Um, but I think in the UK, there's a sense of politeness. So a shadow would also be being like an asshole, this collective sense of just being a dick. I think is Brits are.
I channel it. I channel it. Don't worry. Don't worry. It's all good. But that being a bit too nice, people pleasers, right? I mean, the Dutch share the sort of "don't be too big for your boots" kind of one, right?
Yeah, the Dutch are more direct.
Uh,
And then there's also, I would say, the shadow of change, like the institutionalized idea
right.
of Britain being quite rooted in tradition. Things have to be a certain way, and to change stuff up and to be really modernized and right on the edge of what's new. That's kind of edgy for the collective culture of Britain that like things to be just the way that they are.
I had Chris Williamson, who's a Brit who moved to the States to do podcast work, talk about this. And I've had the same experience. I was in Austin recently. I know you're in America now. There's a feeling of possibility, of newness, of I can be on the edge of something, of freshness. And it's like I can is the feeling in America, whereas the feeling in Europe is we can't or we shouldn't,
Yes.
something like that. So there's positives and negatives and all of this. Good. How do you do shadow work other than sort of go sort of full? Because therapy is the traditional way, right? Going sort of full Jungian on the couch or Freudian or whatever. So, how do you do shadow work other than expensive therapy?
Yeah. So I do my work in group, and specifically that often is in a group of maybe 25 to 40 in circle with a mat in the middle. And one of the powerful ways of, or the powerful reasons we have group is that in a group we create an amplified field and a powerful reflective mirror. Often we can't see our own eyeballs, so it's helpful to get reflection from others. So group dynamics and amplified fields can help penetrate beyond our own defenses that we can't often get to, even in a one-to-one setting. Having a group energy can really support that. And let's say, for example, that somebody realizes they've got a shadow range that they want to access. I mentioned anger earlier, so I'll carry on that thread. So somebody realizes that this idea of being an asshole or being too nice is up in their life, and they're realizing that I'm not able to be with anger. Like I've made anger wrong. It isn't allowed because whatever the reason is, we don't go into the therapy of who did what to us, how and when.
Yeah, it's boring.
It's not an it's but what we can do is support that person to get on the mat and embody that more and to use certain techniques and practices where the group, the tribe, the community can
Yep.
support that person in accessing more of that range that they wouldn't have access to on their own. So think of it as a form of like group liberation activation where
Right.
we're not trying to heal through a therapeutic approach, but we're actually liberating through helping people access the ranges that they've denied.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, there's definitely things that can be done in groups that can't be done individually. And I think sort of a lot of personal growth in hyper individualized kind of West is waking up to that. I actually
Mhm.
heard you're from people I trusted, you're a very, very good group facilitator. So we have a lot of coaches that listen to this, but also facilitation. So yeah, do you want to say something about the art of group facilitation? You've done a lot of it, right?
Yeah, I've been, yeah, 22 years probably has been my, yeah, I spent a lot of hours in circle. It's kind of my thing, group facilitation. I love working with the field. So the field is, think of it as like a group nervous system. Um, there is certain physiological powers that come when you put a bunch of nervous systems together. One of those things is entrainment. So members of the same species will begin to entrain at a neurological level, and humans are no different. So being able to read group fields, being able to sense and to use and to guide group energy is a powerful tool, and it's a profound way to actually bring an imprint of what is actually possible for us as humans. So if I were to allow myself to go a little bit more woo-woo here, I believe that there is um, a natural state of togetherness that we have forgotten as humans because through our civilizational upgrade, we've lost touch a little bit with this sense of togetherness and tribe and community and just the village, basically.
Yeah, modernity is a
Yeah,
issue to
and
in.
time in these circles and in group, and if it's facilitated well, we can come back to that imprint of togetherness. And when I say facilitated well, because you're specifically asking about group facilitation, my role as a group facilitator is to create coherence. So as you get, like, if every single person coming into the group is like a musical instrument untuned, if we're all playing together at the same time, it's a cacophony. And so one of my roles as a group facilitator is to bring coherence and to support the group into actually syncing up. And then from that place of coherence, we can do magic in those spaces. But the magic happens more organically and emergently and automatically rather than me from an authority. So my role is mainly as a guide once that coherence is in place.
Mm. What do you love as a facilitator? What's like the thing you're just like, ah, that's what I adore.
Oh my God. When there, to watch people kind of break open into the most exquisite parts of their humanity. I can never get bored with it. Like people have said, well, you've done this for 22 years. Aren't, don't you bored? Haven't you seen it all? And I'm like, I'm constantly surprised by the art, really, of the human heart. Meaning that when people express their truth, their deepest authenticity, there is something that just awakens this like joy in my being. And I feel like it's a remembrance of like, yes. And I feel like I'm the luckiest guy in the world. I have the best kind of job, if you want to call it that, to be in witness to humans rediscovering and remembering who they are and to bring that back home to their kids and to their relationships. It's amazing. And I'm lit up by it. I've never been bored.
Mm. Mm. What's your sort of oh crap moment as a facilitator? Like, oh God, this has happened, or someone that walks in and you just roll. Come on, be honest with me, man. You do authenticity is one of your things, so don't give me the
Mm.
PR. Like, what's your sort of eye roll? Oh shit, not another one kind of moment.
Um, There was, yeah, it's usually in relation, the thing that comes up immediately as you uh asked about that was participants who come into the space and they lie on their intake form about medication, feel so good in the space that then they decide without telling us that they've stopped their medication
Okay,
and then
that's
off the rails and they end up being, well, at one point we had to take somebody out into the space and it was like a disruption.
yeah.
So I don't believe that these amplified fields are healthy for everybody.
Mm,
Amplification doesn't
mm.
mean good, it just means amplification. So if somebody's already on a wobbly kind of like mental health kind of area where I'm not certain that if someone has got a lot of trauma, for example, this probably isn't the best place to be. I
Right,
think
right.
it requires a resilience in the nervous system to use a group amplified field in a way that's beneficial, in my opinion.
Yeah, I've definitely seen people who should be in one-to-one therapy and healing and
Yeah,
trauma work go
I
to
agree.
group education because it's somehow easier or feels less of a
Yeah,
blow to their self-esteem, and that's
yeah,
not always a gift to the group, you know. I mean,
yeah.
there's a certain amount that can be
I,
maintained.
I, I'd say as well, the other eye roll kind of client is this is stereotypical, but often when couples come, it's usually the woman that is wanting their man to come and they drag him along, and he's not really wanting to be there, but he's
Yeah,
there
yeah.
for the relationship. And that kind of resistance is hard to build coherence out of.
Yeah, you've got to sort of sell the training to that guy when he's in the room, right? Like, okay, I can see it's like the business guys who have been sent by HR. It's not always great. Do you think we can have too much authenticity? Or to ask the question a slightly different way, the sort of American emotional, confessional, very emotion-centered culture, which again, coming through the romantics, really through the hippies, it kind of starts to seem narcissistic after a while. People talking
I
about their
agree.
feelings endlessly in groups.
I
So
agree.
where does authenticity cross over into something unhelpful? And can we have too much emotion at the center of things?
Yes, 100% agreed. Um, there is, there's a movement around radical honesty, around telling the truth about everything to everyone all the time. I'm not a fan of that. Um, for me, I believe that there is an important skill and an important power to be able to open and be transparent and vulnerable and have access to our inner world and our authenticity. But when we use that as a continual mode of communication, it can actually be a form of manipulation for those who are not able to do that. It becomes another form of superiority where we
Yeah.
subtly use our emotional kind of like intelligence almost as a win over somebody else. And it just feels like another power dynamic in
Mm,
this
mm.
piece. For me, I believe that we need to relationally, when we're with our partner, be open, but there's such a thing as over processing emotionally. And where in our relationships, we just are constantly opening up to all these parts and nuances and things that don't feel good. And then in the end, it kind of doesn't add to the relationship. It actually burdens the relationship.
It's
It can
annoying, yeah. Never
can
date a therapist.
depolarize the relationship. And I'm a big, as a man, and I feel kind of like more traditionally orientated as a man. I'm kind of like not really into this whole woke stuff. I like stoicism. I'm into being more contained emotionally and to be more in that place of having access, but not needing to express that access all the time.
Yeah, it makes sense. Makes sense. I want to share a model for those on YouTube. They'll be able to see it on the screen here now. So this is from Christian's website. I thought it was just a nice to have a visual, but we'll talk people through it for people who aren't watching on YouTube. That you have this model of four directions of the heart, right? So connect to body, obviously, embodiment coaching podcast. You're gonna love that. Connect to source, more spiritual, and giving and receiving love, essentially. Do you want to talk us through this model? Because I think it's a pretty nice, simple model for looking at some of this work.
Yes, indeed. So the idea is to understand that our kind of like joy or happiness is founded upon having access to these four different directions. So the up and down is what we would call our vertical connection. Like you said, the way down through the body. It's not just the body. It's like everything to do with having access to our emotions, our capacity to feel our sensations, all the way down to feeling supported by being on the earth, nature, connected to the ground. Our source connection is how tethered are we to awareness, to consciousness, to something larger that we are a part of. And different people have different names for it. It can be spiritual, but it's just this sense of being held by life and having this access to consciousness, awareness. Now, the other parts are relational. The horizontal is like, okay, can I be all of me in the presence of you? This is, can I share my truth and not have to edit because of who you are? Am I managing myself because I'm worried that you won't validate me? So this capacity to, can I express all of me is the out direction. And the in direction where most people are blocked is, can I receive love? Can I even allow you to touch me? Can I be touched by life? Can I feel myself being opened? Or am I encrusted and hardened and deadened and numb because of my own lack of capacity to receive? Um, a lot of people aren't good at genuinely receiving attention. And that's why we have a high degree of narcissism and constant addiction to what we look like is self-absorption, but it's not actually being absorbed. If it actually was let in, those things wouldn't actually happen. Someone who's really healthy in receiving doesn't go around craving attention,
Mm.
right? A healthy individual that's really open in their heart is just naturally whole in that, and they don't have a need to externally fill.
Mm. As a trainer, how do you find that? So over the years, it's changed for me, but like many trainers, I think I was coming from some place of wanting attention. Some people say all trainers are frustrated rock stars or frustrated comedian, and perhaps in my case. And then, over the years, it's like you realize, it's not so great. And it becomes about me as opposed to about them. And then there's a bit of a come down from it. Sometimes when I'm mentoring young trainers, I'm like, hey, it's your first big gig. You might have a bit of a come down tomorrow, or don't let it go to your head. I've seen mentees who have really let it get, they've really sort of taken the ego on, like, all these people love me. I'm amazing. So yeah, any advice for like up and coming trainers out there when they start getting some of that attention online or in groups?
Yeah. Well, I've experienced everything you've just shared. So I've had my fair share of that. And I think it's a constant thing to be aware of. It's like I am always checking that part of me that's going, where is this building my identity? Where is this validating me consistently? And how is my world kind of like built around this workaholic addiction just to get my next fix so that I can be, like you said, the kind of what do you sing a song about a rock star, like
Frustrated rock stars. I think that feeling of being on a stage. I remember the first stage I was
yeah,
on. Like, yeah,
yeah,
I've seen you've been on some big stages, so I bet you get
exactly.
this.
And some of the biggest ones, I used to be on, run these 4-day retreats with 400 people in an auditorium. And at the end of those 4 days, the come downs on those are really, I got a taste of what it might be a little bit like those people who are like these famous musicians on stage and they kind of have this big field of attention and then they have to go back to themselves at night.
Oh, it's rough. My friend Jamie used to be a rock star. Jamie Cato is a good mate of mine. And the first time I did a really big gig, I actually got his advice on it. He's like, no, 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 you've just had like a massive dopamine hit.
Yeah,
That's a drug you just
yeah,
took.
totally, totally, 100%. So I think what I would tell people as advice is like expect it, normalize it, and just be in that constant humbleness and be in the support of others. But that I think humility is really important, right? The practice of going, don't take this personally, especially the good things people say.
Right, right. Don't take it personally.
Don't get too attached to all of this and to allow yourself to surf it rather than trying to identify with it. It's like we're
Right,
on the
yeah.
ocean, we're not the ocean.
Yeah, I had a couple of years ago, the business wasn't doing so well, and I thought, oh, what if I gave this all up and I wasn't an embodiment coach anymore? And I thought, oh, that's okay. And it's felt much
Mhm.
freer since then. It's felt like, oh, I don't have to do this. This doesn't define who I am, and it's nice. It's a pretty cool job, but yeah. My therapist said I'd integrated my narcissism well, which was fucking rude, but I think it's probably true. Let's go to the coaching side then. So, how does all this hard IQ stuff apply to the coaches out there? They're coaching people. If we're just coaching from the head, that doesn't do so well, right? So, yeah, let's give something to the coaches who are listening.
Yeah, so hard IQ is a somatic approach. So somatic basically means is interpreting sensations and potentially trauma and things that are happening through the body rather than just trying to intellectualize and analyze through a mental frame. So it's understanding that our bodies are our biography. It's what happened to us. Our past is stored in our body, and who we are is often an expression of that. And therefore, if we want to make big changes in our clients' lives, it's helpful to kind of meet the body and not ignore it. So I think this is a big component. And like I said, doing that together with others in group helps us feel more. So if we want access somatically, it's helpful to do that in a group because we often feel more somatically in a group space than we do on our own. So those two things come together. So I'm a big fan of teaching coaches how to offer group coaching. Not only does that make more impact, it also makes more income too, because you leverage your time better.
You,
Um,
you also, you also come from a martial arts background, right? So I imagine the idea of practice is probably pretty key, that we're learning through practicing rather than just having one big, crazy weekend with Tony Robbins and then we're fine, like some sense of having to embed it.
not just practice. I'm a big fan of mastery, which is coming from the martial arts place as well. This idea that foundations and practicing the most basic skills is what's most important, not the fancy techniques everyone wants to learn to look good. The masters that are out there who are really, really good and proficient at martial arts are spending hours doing the boring, most tedious things every day to the point where it's all unconsciously competent. Um, so yes, I believe that, for facilitators who really want to get good, there is a need to be in that frame of mastery, rather than just, like you said, having a peak experience and then letting that be like enough. One of the ways we train and practice, I have my own retreat center in the Netherlands called New
Yeah, yeah.
Eden, and um, we're gradually opening up more and more time, called Living in Tribe, where we have weeks that are open where people can just come, and it's not a held retreat, it's a held practice arena. So it's like
Uh-huh.
people coming where they want to put this work into motion into everyday life with other people who also want to do the same. Um, and I think that's really just important to be in those spaces to just practice the skills.
Nice, nice. Got to get the reps in there to get the mastery, as you say. So that's what was your martial arts background? I heard you had one, but I wasn't clear which one.
Yeah, I started off with a bit of Taekwondo, then moved into Wing Chun,
Hmm.
which is a form of Southern Chinese martial art.
One of my favorite topics at the moment is meaning and what John Vervaeke calls the meaning crisis. So we're trying to learn these skills relationally. We're missing the village, as it were, that sense of deep connectedness. We're missing the deep connectedness maybe to the spirit. That I think that's the up in your model of four directions. So we're trying to do all this personal growth, but it's still in this kind of individual, I want to get the things for me consumer model. Any thoughts on coaching personal growth in the age of the meaning crisis?
Mm. Yeah, I think what you just shared there really resonates about even when it's framed through all of these things around connecting to source, ultimately there's still this consumerism culture in our spirituality and our personal development where I'm taking and I'm wanting to buy the next best thing. And there's built in to that. I'm not familiar with the term that you're using around the meaning. Is it the meaning culture? Is that what you
Meaning
shared?
crisis, crisis. It
Meaning,
just means that we've hit a point in modernity where life lacks meaning. A lot of people have, as a result,
oh,
suicide, drug addictions, etc.
yeah, yeah. And again, just going back to this idea of village, there's something that I think we've intrinsically lost that is really wholesome as humans. I believe we are social creatures, that we need to be in contact and close proximity. But I think we're living in a culture where we're living with more people than ever, but have never felt more alone because the interconnectedness is missing, the togetherness is not there, the lack of just simply coming together. Like I just had this most amazing period of time at New Eden for Christmas where we just gathered with friends and we could just be together. There's an invitation just to drop in, and it was so nourishing. And then meaning, I don't know, it goes two ways. That there are people who are like so craving epic experience,
Yeah.
almost going down the route of like, I need the next peak thing. I need to
Very
go for
intense. Yeah, yeah.
intensity. But the intensity is a form of closure. It's a
Right.
compensation. There's something about, can we just relax and come into our being and then slow down and be in contact with each other as humans? And there's something that meets a need that's so deep, it often doesn't have a name. We don't have a name for it in our culture. But when we do slow down and have that, meaning is intrinsic, meaning it just feels good to be alive. It's not like we need to suddenly have more because we are so met, we're so nourished, that having more kind of fades away in those moments, in my opinion.
I notice when I'm in those sort of deep community moments or did retreats that addictions fall away as well. I stop wanting to check my phone or I stop like being sexually hungry in a unhealthy way. It just also drops off and I'm just kind of quietly happy, kind of chill. That feels maybe more like the state without romanticizing it too much, the state of Eden, as you say. By the way,
Mm.
I heard you had a place called New Eden. I assumed it was in Bali or Thailand. So when I found out it was in northern Holland, right? Northern
Yes.
Netherlands.
That's fun. Oh yeah.
What's the train time from Amsterdam if I'm ever want to pop in?
It's around, yeah, it's a couple of hours train to the
Couple
local train
hours.
station, or it's a 90-minute drive from Schiphol Airport. Yeah, so
Oh,
it's
not bad.
relatively close and accessible. But yeah, it's not in Thailand or Bali. But I can understand why you might
But there's a
experience.
realism to that I like because there's a fantasy and these people that have these retreat centers in Costa Rica and Tulum. There's a sort of fantasy. I was kind of like, yeah, it's down to earth. It's in the Dutch. That's great. Is that what you mean by like humanity 2.0? I've heard you talk about that term. What does that mean?
Um, well, there's this, yeah, it's like I'm not using that term so much anymore, but it's more around this trying to give people a visual of the fact that we are in a transition, a paradigm shift, if you want to call it that, where, we've gone from a place of kind of like hyper independence, and we're kind of returning into more interconnectedness or interdependence. That's kind of like the shift that I'm wanting to support through the work that I'm doing. Um, and within that next kind of like level of humanity, if you want to call it a level, although I don't really like that, kind of infers some kind of hierarchy.
Love hierarchy. All about the hierarchy. Don't like circles. So next level. Do it.
Yeah, there's something about the fact that we are entering into more in that interconnectedness, we have access to knowledge that isn't just localized. So what that basically means, transitioning from, say, computers that have only data on the hard drive to the internet. That was a massive leap in having access to information. And I'm saying, as humans, as we become more interconnected in these fields, what I've noticed is that there's an intelligence to group fields when there's coherence, and we can access more together than we can on our own. So we can enter almost like a hive mind consciousness where we can begin to tap into intelligence that comes beyond self. So it's not me, it's we. And what if we start to make decisions from that place where we can start to tap into a more collective wisdom? uh, this begins to really excite me as to like, wow, what is possible as we kind of move beyond the, as I said, the hyper independent, it's all about me framework.
Sounds like psychological communism to me. Not sure I like the sound. I know that my Wii Space friends would love this. So shout out. We had a few episodes with people from like circling and authentic relating. So like my friend John Thompson and Marisha from Berlin. There's been various people that have come from that space who would definitely relate to that. And it is something that seems to happen in embodiment spaces when there's a attunement, as you say. I've seen fun little examples of this. Like often my team would all come in wearing the same color t-shirt like when they'd sort of synced up somehow, it was really strange. We'll wrap up relatively soon, but trauma, the one of those hot words. All the kids are into trauma. Everyone's traumatized all the time now. What's your take on it?
Oh, that's a breath of fresh air listening to you. I like it. Um, yeah, my take on trauma. Well, yeah, I mean, everyone has trauma. I mean, that's not a new concept. For me, trauma is basically an expression of where is our range limited. So in our human expression, what do I not have access to? Now, the whole idea that it was because dad did this to me and mum did this to me, and we need to recycle it and go back and try and work it and do all of that. I'm a little bit suspicious of going into too much trauma to the point where I'm not using that word so much in my works anymore, because it's become almost like this hot topic that people want to jump into a bandwagon, that everyone
Right,
is
right.
trauma trained, trauma informed, and this is all about meeting trauma. Um, and yeah, like I don't like, for example, a lot of people look at their life and they use the language of like, what problems do I have? But I don't look at life as the problems I have. I look at what range is limited. And this is often something that needs to have a bit of a reframe. And a range, what I mean by that is, what part of myself is locked away, closed down, shut down, not accessible? And if I were to open that part of me, the problem that I think I have in my life would automatically balance or resolve because I have access to all of me. So rather than focus on problems, I'm focusing on liberation of
Yeah.
all parts of myself. So trauma to me is basically where we are stuck in parts that are contracted and aren't yet liberated. So in the work that I do, it's not like I want to find out, well, where have you been traumatized? What's your trauma? I want to know. It's more like let's liberate. And as we move towards that liberation, the contractions will often emerge. So the way I would say that is we don't look for our pain, we focus on our joy, and your pain will find you. As you move towards more opening, as you move towards more liberation, all those parts that you need to meet, they're going to come and arise automatically. We don't need to go looking for them. We don't need to investigate trauma. But I think it's very important that we are trauma informed, that we know what to do when our clients are in a trauma response, when they
Sure,
are
sure.
in a nervous system reaction around fight, flight, fawn, freeze. These are important things to be aware of, to notice, to see, to learn how to support people when they're in those states. And they're more likely to be in those states in a group because many of us have experienced group trauma, which is
Okay.
trauma created by bullying, being in a family dynamic that wasn't pleasant. So a lot of people seek out groups unconsciously to resolve group trauma. So it's really important that trauma is
Interesting.
part
Yeah.
of the conversation, but I don't want to, but the overemphasis of trauma is also just like emotional vulnerability, as you said earlier. Too
Trauma
much, we
deformed,
start
I
to feel
call it.
yeah, it could be a bit narcissistic if we're over involved with our own emotional experience.
My trauma. It's
Yeah,
my.
exactly.
I'm
Yeah,
so
yes,
special.
exactly. And we become a
Or trauma deformed, it becomes a tool to hit everybody else with and control them
yeah,
with. But
yeah, it
yeah,
becomes a part of the
generally
identity.
being trauma informed is smart for coaches, etc. Right?
Totally.
Christian, I wasn't sure if you were a blagger, but my friend said you were good, so I thought I'd get you on. So I've been happy I did because I've been enjoying this. And anything you want to talk about that we haven't covered already that's sort of like alive for you? Like I like this idea of yours of what's alive and kind of tuning into that. So yeah, what's there for you?
Um, well, right now for me, if I were to speak to what's alive, I'm actually with the question of simplifying my life and doing less, actually. I've realized that being in these amplified fields can be
Mm.
quite an addictive pathway for me in my own life. And I'm in a place where I'm looking at, honestly, not shutting things down. The opposite. I really love what I do, but to do it titrated. In other words, to maybe do less, but make that less more potent, more impactful. I noticed last year I was like burning the candle at both ends, and it impacts health. And there's something about just getting so into this identity of I'm here to serve and I've got a mission in the world. I have a strong purpose. And that too can be a bit of an override and a bit of a narcissistic
All right.
way of approaching life is to use the sense of like I'm on God's mission. I'm on a deep purpose to like change the world. And then we're burning the candle at both ends. But what's happening to our relationships? What's happening to our time with our kids? What's actually are we in balance around it? And so for me, I'm just in that place of self-honesty around what is actually working? What do I actually want? Where's the times out of circle where life is just an adventure to travel for the sake of traveling, not because I've got an event in that country?
Right,
Um,
right. The holiday. Do you remember those? I mean, purpose is a sort of good excuse for self-abuse, I think, on one level, right? It's like, hey, it's like we're on a mission from God, you know? And then it's like, oh, I can neglect this, I can neglect that. So I can totally relate to that. Yeah.
yeah. And I do, and I'm not a religious guy, but I do have a deep spiritual heart in that I feel a connection to something bigger. I can't tangibly prove that, but I feel it. It's something that I've had all my life, this interconnectedness with life, with the world. I don't hold it through a lens of there's this higher power kind of figure that has authority. It's more like I'm in communion with life, and that feels really, really sacred. But and there is this part that like would love to redefine like the saying take people to church. I think I think it's important that people are reminded of the sacredness and specialness and awe of life but not necessarily in its epicness, but in its simplicity. Like being able to just wake up and be in nature and be touched by it. I want people to awaken to the miracle of what it is to just be here right now without anything having to change. And and to,
Nice.
and to recreate this connection to awe and wonder through the little things.
Mm,
And I think when we talk about being in our head, it just means being so distracted by what we want in the future or what happened to us in the past that we're missing it.
mm.
And that's what I want to return to and center my work around is not around, okay, what do you need to heal, how your biggest purpose and blah 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 blah. It's just I think less is more and simplifying is feels really important for me right now.
A sensible British jumper of a piece of advice to keep everybody. Love it. I love it. I was looking at the cold blue winter sky of the UK today, and my friend was texting me from Costa Rica, and I was like, "Nah, I'm pretty good here actually for now. This is still a beautiful place, you know, the simplicity of that, even though it's nothing exotic or I've walked that path 1,000 times. Literally, I was on today. Good. I think we're sort of coming to a natural end here, Christian. Yeah. Anything you want to say before we wrap up? Maybe where do people find you? Where do they go to see your stuff?
Yeah. So I spend most of my time either facilitating facilitators, in other words, training the next generation of group facilitators, um, or to give people an actual experience and imprint of what it's like to be in these types of group fields, to do their inner work together with others. People can find out about all of that at my website at heartiq.org. That's HEARTIQ.org. Also on Instagram, people can search for me there, and Facebook and all the regular social channels. But yeah, go visit the site and reach out. I'd love to connect.
Christian, thanks for joining us.
You are welcome. Thank you.